I'm a carp nut. I'm going to tell a quick story before I jump into my slides. I do a lot of presentations like this, and this is a story I told lots, so you might have heard it, but if not, I think you'll like it. I was a guide at one point years ago when I still had patience for guiding, so I applaud all you people that still do it. I was short-lived as a guide, and I was guiding on the South Fork of the Snake River in Idaho. It was a yellow Sally hatch, and we were doing pretty good on dries, and then, kind of started slowing down on dries. We went dry dropper, and we're about a mile from the takeout towards the end of the day, and a client who I'd guided a couple times. It's kind of a faster run next to a slower area, and fly's coming through, and it drops like a dry dropper would. He sets the hook, and there's this giant golden flash, right? And I'd fished in that area for years and never caught a carp. I'd seen them. They were around on the edges once in a while, but you just didn't see them where we fished most of the time. They weren't eating the stuff. And plus, we're not that deep. We're not in the flats. Everybody in the boat thought it was the biggest brown in the river, right? The entire boat. We're screaming, and it was 3/4 of a mile down the river before we realized it was a carp, when it got close enough for us to actually see that this was a carp. And what was amazing is the entire boat, right? We all were in the process of having the greatest fishing experience of our lives. This 30-inch brown on the South Fork of the Snake River. And then it's a carp, and it was like, are you kidding me? It's a freaking carp, right? But what had changed, really, right? That fish still gave us the best fight of this angler's life. The best fight I ever saw guiding on that river. And it was a 7-pound carp. Like, we're not talking a giant carp, but that 7-pound carp was better than any fish any of us had ever caught in there. But because in our minds, we were raised that this fish is a trash fish and this isn't an important fish, it ruined that experience for us. Think about that, right? It was incredible. And I talk to people all the time. I get trolled because I have a fairly large internet presence. I get trolled all the time by people, and they tell me stories like this, like, yeah, I was out fishing for smallies, and then this dang carp got it, and it took me 25 minutes to land him. Yeah, sorry, that sucks for you. That's a terrible day. I'm sorry. A better fish ate your fly. You're welcome. I don't know. So I've come around, obviously, later in my life I love these fish. I absolutely love these fish. And I've caught thousands of trout and thousands of bass, and nothing wrong with those fish. I still love to go chase, dry fly trout fishing and streamer fishing. And I love all these other kinds of fishing, but it's really hard for me to do any of that when I know that carp fishing's good. Because to me, it's just incredible. So for those of you, I've got this, sorry, I'm knocking this off here. It's going right here. Sorry. So for those of you who have not done it yet, I'm super excited for you. I was talking to Tyler. He gave me the question of, what's one of your best fly fishing moments of your life? And one of the best for me was my first bonefish, right? That's a flats fish. And the first time I caught a bonefish is that changed my life, right? Sight fishing this fish in shallow water. I had done carp, and I fished for carp for a very long time, but not the way we're going to talk about how you do it here. Right, they might be rising, or I used to go down to Lake Powell, and they'd be kind of cruising, and we would slow strip streamers, and sometimes you'd get we didn't know what we were doing. It was just, hey, there's a giant fish, let's see if we can get it to eat, and sometimes we could. The first time I went bone fishing, and I saw fish tailing and eating like that, and I hooked that first bonefish, and that line goes screaming out, it changed my life. I was done at that point. And I got done with that, well, it was during that trip, but really when I got done with that trip, I was like, I can't wait a year to go back there, right? Which most of us, if you do go down, and you're pretty fortunate if you can get down there more than once a year. And I was like, I've seen fish eat like this when I've been out duck hunting, right? It's gotta be the same. And then I got online and started researching and John Montana stuff. And I'm like, holy crap, people are doing this. I had no idea, right, at that point, that people were approaching carp just like they do bonefish. And here we are today, like that, it's unbelievable. So I'm excited for you guys, all of you that have not done a bonefish or you've not done a carp, to get out there and experience that for the first time. So what I'm going to focus on today a little bit is the DIY guys, right? It's awesome if you can get guided for carp. If you guys are in a cool area. Most of you that are in this area, there are people that guide for carp. I'm from Salt Lake City, or just north of Salt Lake City. There's nobody in Utah that guides for carp. I get hit up an awful lot to guide for it, but honestly, no. No. But there's nobody that does it. Getting guided is a great option because you're going to learn an awful lot with the guide. You should, if you can, take the time to go out and have that. I mean, treat it as a lesson, get out there and learn. But I'm going to talk a little bit how we would approach this as a DIY angler. And one of the key things that happens that I think is a key piece of being a successful flats angler as a DIY angler is access, being able to get to the fish and move around these flats. And the most important tool, in my opinion, for that is a personal watercraft of some kind. I'm not going to endorse any one specific product today, but SUPs are awesome. Okay? Kayaks are cool. And so these are kind of the three that I'm going to talk about a little bit. SUPs, kayaks, and microskiffs. A SUP is a stand-up paddleboard, if you're not familiar with it. I know I saw some guys yesterday out fishing. Is that any of you guys that were on a SUP yesterday? No? Oh, I thought they'd be here today. I was stoked to talk to them. Yeah, stand-up paddleboard. All right, we already watched that one. Let me skip past that one. Oh, no, we didn't. Well, we'll still skip that one for now. All right, so what are kind of the key things and why is this important? Carp, let me talk a little bit about carp real quick. And Daryl talked about it just a little bit. Carp are, okay, I'm going to even back up a little bit further than that, okay? If we think of intelligence in fish, like a trout and a bass have roughly the same level of intelligence. So we say maybe they have an IQ of like 4, okay? A carp, if that's the case, a carp has about a 7, okay? So it's dang near twice as smart as the fish that we typically chase. And their lateral line is magnitudes more sensitive than trout or bass, right? So those two things become a big challenge when we're trying to target carp. They can hear or feel vibrations extremely easily, and they learn really fast, okay? Much faster than the other species. The people all the time are like, yeah, I go to the marina and I throw a cigarette out and the carp eats it. And I'm like, yeah, because he learned really fast that humans are dumb and are going to throw food at him. That's not a dumb fish. That fish, they learn very, very fast, and they'll change their behaviors very, very quickly because of that. So we got to be really stealthy in how we approach them. And these craft give us the ability to do that, whether it's a kayak or a SUP or a microskiff. Couple of things that you want to keep in mind, and I'm going to kind of approach this of, if you guys are looking to go get one yourself, I want to educate you on what you want to look at for it. So the big thing that these provide, and I'm going to jump into that for just a second too, is access to areas that you otherwise couldn't access. Like even yesterday, I thought Tyler was going to kick me out of the boat a couple times because I was letting us go up into too shallow a water. Because I fish on a SUP all the time, like shallow water is nothing. Like if it's not 3 inches, I'm not worried about it most of the time. So I can get into areas that other people just absolutely cannot access. So access at the bottom of this, that is what these personal watercraft will provide for you. I go to the Bahamas every year to fish for bonefish. I fish creeks in the Bahamas that I know nobody but me fishes every time I go to the Bahamas. I am on fish that have never been pressured unless it was by me the year before. Like literally. And so the same thing happens for me with carp. I fish areas that just flat out, there's no way. In fact, last weekend I was out at one of my local stomps, and some guys that I've messaged with on Facebook and Instagram, showed up and they came up and introduced themselves to me. And I was like, I'm gonna take you guys to a cool spot. I mean, you're out here with me. We're gonna go out to the spot. And to get there, their equipment, there's just no way they could get it. But we got on the SUPs and I took them back in there and we accessed, I don't know, they had their best day. I think they both boated over 20 fish. And why was that? Because we were in an area that you just absolutely cannot get to. You can't get to it quietly without a personal watercraft like this. So for a DIY guy, if you want to go out and just destroy it, this tool is the tool to get. So when I'm looking at, if you're looking at like getting these, so now we'll kind of get into what you should be looking for. And why SUP versus anything else. Now there are, or micro skiffs are good too. But what we absolutely want in this tool is the ability to stand on it and be able to move around, right? Because if I've got a fish back here, I don't want to have to try to cast like this, right? I want to be able to turn and make a cast to it. Now most people think, hey, there's no way you can do that on a paddleboard. Well, yeah, right? If your wife has a paddleboard she likes to go cruise around the lake on, that's not a fly fishing paddleboard, right? That's not going to work. Because you have to stand and have your core stable. And if you spend some time on these, you'll be able to do that, but it doesn't work. So we want one that's built for standing up, like really built for standing up and not moving. We don't have to be tracking to be stable. Anchoring. You'll see over here in this picture where the geese are eating off the edge of my paddleboard. They have that pole that's stuck into the ground right there. That's either a sand spear or a pole anchor, okay? That's how we anchor those things. So if you're looking at something, you absolutely want, whether it's a kayak, a micro skiff, a SUP, you want one that has that integrated system where you can actually use a pole anchor or a sand spear. Now, there are what are called power poles, which are electronic units that go on the back that drive a pole down in the back. Some of you that may have boats, some of them have them. I've been on flats boats that have those. I actually don't recommend those. The reason being is when you drive that down in, like say I'm coming up on a fish, a lot of people will, all right, now I'm gonna stop. As soon as you drive that in, you're spooking the fish. They feel that when it goes in. So if I stop myself, it's like barely get it into the sand. And a lot of times I'm not doing that. You'll see in some of my videos where I'm floating. Sometimes I've got like my stick like right here and I'm casting with one hand. You don't have to do that. But putting that pole in is gonna spook the fish. So I don't love the power pole, but you need one of them for it. And then the drive system. Okay, so pros and cons. And I think it was Jeremy that I was talking to right before this. We were talking about when you get out on these SUPs, especially the bigger SUPs that are that are more stable, and you get wind, it becomes very hard to maneuver those things. You're like a sail on this thing, and it's blowing you around. So having some kind of drive system is really important. The two ways that I approach that is on my personal. You can see the electric motor that I have on the back. SUPs are not designed to have an electric motor on the back. Nobody designs one to have an electric motor on the back. However, there are certain ones that have a power pole mount on the back. Well, that power pole mount, you can get a transom mount that mounts to that and convert that. So then you can have a transom mounted electric trolling motor or motor of some kind on the back. So I use that a ton on my bigger board. On my smaller board, I actually have a convertible paddle that is both kayak paddle and a SUP paddle. So when it's time to like cruise, I switch it to kayak, I sit down on my board and I row it like a kayak. Then when it's time to fish, I stand up. Now, there are kayaks out there that are built for standing on them. And I have people all the time tell me, oh, you should try this kayak, and you should try this kayak. And I'm like, how heavy is that kayak? Well, it's like 150 pounds. This is 50 pounds, and this is a big SUP, a heavy SUP. Okay, so my ability to get to areas and launch this is so much better than those big, stable kayaks that people are using. It's a great tool for what they do. I have a really, really nice, expensive kayak that I bought years ago, and it's up in my hayloft collecting dust, and it hasn't been out for years because I use this over that everywhere I go. And again, I'm not really promoting one particular thing. I just want, if you're looking for the ultimate tool to give you access to waters that you just can't get to otherwise. It's this. And like I said, I travel the world with mine and fish some incredible stuff. If possible, try before you buy. That can be really hard. Like the brand that I use, I'm not going to say their name because they're not here today and they made me mad. Right, there's none of them out here to like go try. So maybe you guys have, but in Salt Lake City, we didn't have them. Okay, so key factors on stand-up is width. Okay, I would say a minimum of 38 inches if you want a truly stable platform. It needs to be 38 inches wide. That would be the minimum I would look at for a true fishing sup. Okay, and I kind of already mentioned that it needs a flat bottom. And then a really nice feature you're starting to see on sups that are coming out nowadays are split pontoons. So they'll have a pontoon on each side and then kind of a raised area in the middle, and that actually gives them even more stability. Most of those are hard side. The one that I use is inflatable, which is awesome because it like packs down to a suitcase side and I can take it virtually anywhere. Am I geeking out as much as Daryl was on I do love them though. And Daryl just got the same one I got, and I know he's stoked to go try it. They're freaking amazing. I actually already jumped into power pole, so I'm going to go past that. We already talked about that too. See, I'm bouncing all over the place, and it's weight and inflatable. All right, let's skip all that. We all love sups, right? You're all going to go get some to fish. Now let's talk about how we catch these fish. There are three. Well, I'm going to talk leader first, and then I'm going to jump into that. I thought it was interesting. We've all kind of touched on this, so I want to talk on leader a little bit. I'm a long leader guy. I would say that on average, I use 15 feet a leader. Okay, and I was laughed at pretty hard this weekend. But when we went fishing yesterday, who caught the fish? I'm not saying that had anything to do with it. A little bit. So I'm a long leader guy. I typically run about 15 feet a leader. I'll either build my leaders, or I actually, like Rio has a 12-foot 0X fluorocarbon that I use, and then I'll add 40-pound fluoro to the butt to extend it an extra 3 feet. And then sometimes I'll even put a little more 10-pound fluoro on the end. And that's kind of where I start with. So why do I have this freaking long A leader, right? Because nobody likes to go out there and cast a 15-foot, 18-foot leader, which I have 18 feet all the time. It's for this technique right here called drag and drop, okay? How many of you have done drag and drop and fish for carp using them, okay? Handful of people. All right, good. Good. This is the most important thing you're going to learn today, okay? I'm not lying. Okay, this is the most important thing you're going to learn today if you want to go catch carp. This is not a redfish technique. This is not a bonefish technique. This is a carp technique, and this technique accounts for, I would say, 90% of all carp caught on a fly. I'm not even joking. Like this is the technique. So I have this really, really long leader. The reason why I like the long leader is that basically when I see a carp coming across or coming towards me, I'm targeting, split my leader in half, halfway of my leader past the fish is where I'm targeting to land that fly, okay? So my fly line, if I have 18 feet of leader, I got 9 feet on this side and I got 9 feet on this side, carp's in the middle. My fly lands, I lift my rod tip up, that fly should ideally be just underneath the water. I lift that rod tip up until I have it in position over the carp's head, over what we call the dinner plate. Daryl mentioned this, the dinner plate from the gill plates, about a 12-inch circle around the face, just not directly in front. Carp can't see straight in front of them. Their eyes are on the sides of their head. Ideally, in a perfect world, I would drop it right next to that eyeball on the side of their face. So they're gonna for sure see it. So I pull that fly, I release all pressure from that. Like my rod tip goes down and that fly flutters down. Daryl likes the swing. I like it to just hammer down. Depends on the situation. Sometimes that just scares the living crap out of them. Sometimes it triggers and it's awesome, right? So that fly comes down, flutters down. The carp, a lot of times, if I put it to the sides, it's going to be awesome because I'm going to see this turn. It's really obvious. If it's subtle and I have it like right here or here, the carp may just kind of open up the side of their mouth and go. They have an incredible suction. They'll suck that fly off the bottom. And here's the thing too. Ideally, we don't want any tension on our line. Okay? And this is something that a lot of people make a mistake about. I want no tension on that line when this happens. Because carp are not like a trout that has to swim into it really to eat it. They have a hoover. Man, they'll suck a bug from 4 inches away into their mouth, and they'll do the same thing to our flies. And that fly gets sucked up in there. If I've got that line tight and they try to suck it, that fly's not going in there. So if I can have all the tension off that line, when that carp sucks, fly goes in. Okay, now I've seen it eat. The carp's eaten it. I've executed a good drag and drop. Now I strip strike. Right? No, because I've got no tension on the line. Right? If I strip strike at that point, all I'm doing is, right? So at that point, I'm going to hybrid set, right? I got to get tension back on that line. Would it be good if I could strip strike in that point? Yeah, it'd be great, because then the fly only moves a little bit and the carp has a chance to re-eat it. The reality is if we execute this correctly and it lands and it eats immediately, we can't. Now, yesterday on the 2 fish that I caught, one of which was 35-ish pounds, on your river here. Thank you, by the way. I would like to appreciate all of you for leaving that one in the river for me to catch. That's the biggest carp I've ever caught. Love you guys. Appreciate it.
It's only because that long week.
That was, hey. So there I was. Tyler spotted the fish. Okay, I'm going to tell you, this is drag and drop yesterday. I turn around, fish is kind of coming out towards me. I cast past it over towards the bank, drag and drop, and it comes down. Now, as soon as it hits, the fish starts, I can see it come down and hit, the fish starts picking up speed. It's either spooked or it's freaking eating at that point, right? That's what I want. Every time that fly comes down, I'm hoping I'm going to see a reaction, right? So in that situation, I had just a second as that fish was coming. I got my line tight. And it wasn't like crystal clear, so I couldn't see for sure. I saw him tip up, and I was doing the strip strike at that point because I'm like, he's on my fly. I don't want to yank. If I did a trout set there, my fly's out of there, right? So sometimes we've got to think on our feet a little bit there. I did strip strike that one. If I'd have brought it down and it landed right here, and he went boom, then I would have trout set or hybrid set to make sure I got that on. Because if I tried to strip set there, he'd have spit it out before I ever got him. Does that make sense, like the difference between why we would set one way or the other? And there's not a hard and fast rule. It's not 100% of the time you should do one or the other. There's also advantages to angles and stuff like that where a trout set can be better, especially if they're in close and you trout set versus strip set. You're changing the angle on the fly because he's this way and I'm pulling this way. I have a better chance of hooking them. But really it comes down to, do I have tension on my line? If I don't have tension on my line, there's no reason to strip set. It's not going to do me any good. All right, so drag and drop. Do you want me to go over that again? Did everybody understand what we're doing with drag and drop? Right? Go out and do this to as many fish as you can and scare the crap out of them for a while until you figure this out. And once you do, it's going to change your life for carp. Promise you. This technique is how we kill it. And there's just nothing like it. All right, so let me talk about, I'm going to go over a couple other, no, that's right. I have videos. I do this stuff. All right, so here's just some examples of some drag and drop so we can see them in action, okay? Fish is up here on the right, drag and drop. So there, you see the flag come in. There's a little bit of a curl cast. See where that dropped down right next to the face? You see the turn and the eat. The charge, that was just like yesterday, but that one wasn't near as big. Fly comes in. Right? So that little charge. And that's the body language we're looking for when we execute a drag and drop. So you can kind of see here on the sup how I'm just floating. I'm not anchored. The water's so calm there that if I anchor, I scare the fish. But you'll see it come in again here on this drag and drop. And that one was subtle, right? He just moved forward a little bit. If I can get to the side a little bit and I can get that turn, it becomes much more obvious that the fish is eaten. You see this one, it comes in on the side, it's kind of hard to see, and then it drops down right there. See, it came to the side, he saw it out of the side of his eye. I get that turn and that eat. So this area is really ideal. This is cool. So this is a cattle trail. This is flooded. So I drag and drop, but it's hanging on a bush up here. Like, watch this, where it comes out. So he stops and eats right there. I've done the drag and drop. It gets right to that branch right there. And I'm waiting. As soon as he comes off, I finish the drop just to get it to come down. That was a 25-pound fish. That was awesome. Right, drag and drop again here. This is kind of urban fishing, an area by my house where we go out and a little bit deeper, heavier flies here. Okay, this is cool. You'll see it come by its head and it tries to eat it and it misses. They can't see in front of their face, so it's like they close their eyes and go at stuff. But then, so he tries to eat it right there, he misses. It goes right by his head, and then I pulled it again to get it in front of him, and he just turned and ate it again. That motion by their face is how we trigger strikes. Again, these guys were moving a little bit faster. I rejigged it because they were kind of past where the drop was. I picked it up without picking it up, just in the water column, and re-dropped it, and that triggered a strike. Right? Muddy water, all I can see is the tail. Figure out where that face is, and I'm still dragging and dropping to that face. I mean, the only thing I can see is the tail, just a little bit on that one. And this is one of my favorites. It's always cool when you see giant schools like this, but then you see how they all spook. You only catch one. The rest are gone. It's neat, but the rest are gone. All right, so that's our drag and drop. I'm gonna just say it one more time. We're gonna do round table and stuff like that. But is there any questions about drag and drop? Because I'm not kidding you. This is the technique you want to learn. Daryl will give you the flies. Then you go use this technique to catch them. Yes.
The distinction of knowing when to do the strip set and the trout set, like you were talking about with the fish the other day. Would you mind summarizing that again?
Yes. So the simplest way to think about that, and the question is the distinction between using a trout set, hybrid set, or a strip set, when we would do that. Really, the key thing there is, do I have tension on my line or not? That is really the key thing. If I do a drag and drop and I can get my line tight before the fish eats, then I want a strip set. A strip set is better because for bonefish, redfish, any flat species, when you can strip set, the fly gets pulled forward if they miss it, and they'll come forward and eat it again. In fact, I've got a ton of videos where the carp eat multiple times, right? They will stay after that prey item. So I want to strip set if I can, but if I execute a good drag and drop and it drops down like right here, which is what I want. I don't want it to land a foot in front of them. I want it to land right friggin' here, right by one of the eyeballs. They're gonna turn and eat it immediately. There's no way I can get my line tight. So if my line's not tight, I trout or hybrid set. If my line's tight, I strip set, okay? And that applies for virtually any kind of fishing we do. If we're out streamer fishing, right? And you see guys all the time, you're streamer fishing and you get a hit and you go like this. I know you love that, right? You're out fishing for muskie and you're streamer fishing. Oh yeah, I got one. Yeah, you're host, right? If my line's tight, it should always be a strip set, no matter what species or how I'm fishing. That's really what it comes down to. Good question. Any other questions about this? Yes?
If you're fishing somewhere like around here that has a really silty bottom, and as soon as you drop the fly, you're like, oh, that fly's just gonna go right into the mud. Can they still see it? Do they sense it, or do you keep it moving?
Yeah, so I fish some silty stuff too. I will tell you that if I think, one, I would look at fly construction in that kind of situation. If you have more of like a platform for that fly to land on, it's not gonna penetrate into that mud as much. A lot of the carp flies are designed to kind of keep a tail up and point it up out. So even if it penetrates a little bit, you'll still have something out of the water. Can they sense it? Probably not if it's not moving, right? Carp really, they hunt by scent, which they may be able to smell it, but that's probably not good because what we're presenting to them is artificial. the vibrations, right? So if it's in the mud, it's probably not seeing that. So if I don't have something for them to visually cue in on, it's probably not very good. But if I have a fly that has a bigger platform, so when it lands, like the carp slider that we used yesterday, has a big body that when it hits into stuff like that, it's not going to penetrate down into it. So a carp slider in that situation is a really good option for a fly, because it's just not going to go down through the muck like something with a narrower body. And so I would look at something like that. Also, lighter flies. If I know I'm on silty stuff, a lot of times I'll go with like an unweighted leech, something that's going to come down really, really slowly, and it's not going to penetrate. It's just going to land softly on that muck. And honestly, in the best case scenario, I'm timing it right so that it never gets to the bottom. These carp will eat it on the drop more readily than any other way. They will catch that sucker as it's coming down before it even gets to the muck. That's the best. Make sense?
So Daryl's talking about pink fluoro for his end of his leader. What, do you have any preference? Or?
I mean, I use fluoro, but he uses pink fluoro.
I think that's what he said.
Yeah, it's the Umpqua Big Pink. Red is the first color that dissipates in the UV column subsurface.
Okay.
So the pink being closer to red minimizes light refraction in nicks and knots. So when you're dealing with spooky fish, having less light refraction on knots and nicks will improve less.
Let me say this. These guys know this. My day job is a nuclear engineer. I'm a pretty smart guy. He's way smarter than me. Okay, so I'm gonna go with that and give it a shot. Like I don't know. He dives into the weeds of that way more than I do. I use fluorocarbon, but I'm gonna give it a shot because I'll take every advantage I can get. But I didn't pick up on I heard you saying the fluorocarbon. I didn't know that. So yeah, I typically run 10-pound fluoro unless I know I'm in stuff they're gonna get into and cause problems. Like the log jams and stuff that Daryl talked about, right? Then I'll throw 20-pound on because I got to get them out. But yeah, I just use fluoro, just regular. And no offense, fly shop guys, I actually just buy cheap fluoro because I tear it up so fast and like I burn through it so fast that like, sorry, I buy my liters from you guys, but I go over and honestly, if you have like a spool of like cheap fluoro over there, like the crappy stuff that goes on the I call them bolt chucking rods, I use that more than anything for just my terminal piece because I tear it up. I'm just burning through it like crazy. And see, Daryl's really good about like designing a fail section, right? For me, and I hate it, it's that tippet connection is where it fails because loop knots don't fail, right? So I use a non-slip loop knot on my fly. So anytime it busts, it's that tippet section. So I'm constantly replacing that tippet section. If I hook for some reason, get a carp in a tail or the back or something like that. I know some people will try to land. I'm like, oh my, that is the most miserable. You're going to try to catch it. They're hard enough when you have them by the face. There's no way. So I'm just busting that. So I burn through my tippet pretty fast, which is kind of why. Sorry, fly shop guys. I really do apologize. I don't know if I answered your question. I use fluoro. All right. Anything else? Yes?
The sunbathing fish in deep water, wherever they are, got the snakes, got a ton of it, not a lot of flats. Ton of fish out there, just on the surface, and one eating when it's hot.
Yeah,
Catchable?
99%, no. We'll just say no. No. Yeah, look, carp at any point can be catchable. I've caught plenty of carp that were sunbathing. But it's not worth your time, honestly. Like, it can happen, but like I'm telling you, if you have to like execute perfectly, because usually they're right at the surface, so I'm gonna scare them pretty easy when I put something there. I still have to do a drag and drop, and it better come right here. So all they have to do is go, and you can catch them. They will eat, and I think it's instinctual, but it is not worth your time because it has to be perfect. Just go find a fish that's really eating. You're going to have more fun. It's going to move to eat it. Those ones just won't move very far. I know a lot of people say they just won't eat. That's not true. I have video evidence. They will eat, but not well. So I wouldn't fish for those sunning fish. And we'll probably wait for the next discussion to maybe talk about active feeders and targeting fish, because I think that would be a real good discussion. I'm not going to dive too deep into that one now, but learn this freaking technique. Any other questions? All right. So I'm going to touch on, how much time do I have, by the way? All right. Well, I don't want to take more than's allotted. Okay. Did I skip? I did. See, I already went to the next slide. Don't learn this one. This one's not near as good. Now, actually, this is more like our bonefish technique, right? And I'm being told, look, guys, this is my first time up here to fish this area. And I was the only one to catch fish. But it was my first time up here in this area fishing. And I'm being told these fish don't act like my fish at home. Maybe. That's yet to be determined. No, I believe there are differences. Doesn't matter where you go. This is a technique that may be more beneficial to you guys than it is to me, where I've got a fish that's coming out, and I'm going to lead it, put my fly out in front of it, and then let the fish come out, and as they get close, I'm going to move it just a little bit to create just a little bit of movement, right? Lead them by quite a bit. And I don't know, that may not be a good technique here too, but I do have one particular spot that I fish where I live that's very skinny. The fish are actually quite a bit smaller. It feels a lot more like bonefish. I can't drag and drop there. So in that situation, I lead those fish. I let them get close, and then I give it a little bit of a twitch to trigger a strike. So it's very similar to bonefish. I'm not going to be moving it as far as maybe I would with a bonefish. Carp don't chase as much as like a bonefish would chase. But this technique is essentially, that's what it is. This is how you're going to go fish for bonefish. This technique works for carp. There are situations that you do it. I would say no matter what, start with drag and drop. Try to drag and drop. And if you're scaring fish, switch to this. You're not going to catch as many that day. It's going to be more frustrating, but you can still catch fish this way. And most people, when they start carp fly fishing, this is the technique that they use. I mean, it's the one that makes the most sense. Because, and I didn't mention this, but I'm going to go back to drag and drop again. Remember, I told you it was the most important thing today, right? Drag and drop. What is it? Okay, good. Okay, so you can't drop it right on the fish's head when you cast at them. Right? Sometimes people come away from one of these seminars and they think, well, you need the fly to land right here. Well, I'm just going to cast it at it. So that fly lands right above the fish and then comes down. I'm not going to say you will never catch a carp doing that, because there are days when you can get away with that, and in situations you can do with that, but 95% of the time you're just going to scare the fish. So we can't cast it right on them, right? So when we're just keeping all these arrows in our quiver, is like I say, for the different scenarios we'll run into when we're out there. But if that same kind of thing happens, if I do a drag and a drop and the fly comes down, the reason why I was saying that is usually when I do it right on their face, it scares them and they take off. Well, if I start doing a drag and drop and I drop it in and the fish turns and takes off and then it does it again, and I get like 2 of those in a row, and I think I made a good presentation there and just scared 2 fish, I'm either going to immediately go with a smaller fly, or I'm going to switch to lead and twitch and change my technique, because whatever the conditions are today, do I need to wrap it up? I'm going to make sure give myself the best chance in those situations. So here's a quick video. This is just one clip, because honestly, I don't do this technique very often, this lead and twitch. But anyway, this is kind of a longer cast too, a little bit harder to, right? So I got the fish out there. I'm letting it settle. You can kind of see the fish up here, flies on the bottom. And I'm just moving it slowly here just to try to get a little bit, and then you see him swim forward and come and get it, right? It's not that it doesn't work. So you'll kind of see it with the fish here when he sees the fly. It's sitting there already. And then you'll see it move, right? He reacts and then he moves forward. It absolutely works, but it's just not as effective. Yeah.
You touched on it a little bit, but how do you know whether it's a presentation problem or a fly problem, and when do you change flies?
Yeah, you don't always know. So for me, the way I troubleshoot that is Color can be important too. There's a lot. So I'm going to start with a fly, a big fly. And it took me a while to get to that point. I actually started using bigger flies because it made for better footage, right? To have that bigger fly to see to eat. And it turned out the carp ate them just as well as the little flies. And I could see them better. And the drone could see. It was like a win-win-win for everybody. So I started using bigger flies. Well, if I think I've executed a couple good casts and I'm spooking fish, I'm going to first go to a smaller fly. I might be the exact same fly, but I'm just going to go smaller. Now, if I'm still spooking fish, maybe I'll change colors. And if I'm still spooking fish, then I'm going to go to lead and twitch. I'm like, all right, I can't cast at them today. For whatever reason, they're freaking out when I cast anywhere near them. So I'm going to lead them by a bunch of feet, and or maybe that day I'll go trout fishing. Maybe. I still think I'll lead and twitch. Now, another thing to keep in mind with, and for both of these techniques, lead and leave is essentially, I think it's what some people do around here talking to the guys yesterday, is you basically, you put it out there and you just let it sit on the bottom and you let the carp find it and pick it up and eat it. I've only ever done that one time. Cast it out, let the carp find it. And it was by accident. I was on the Missouri River, middle of the day. By the way, Missouri, you guys, what a sweet fishery. Dry fly fishing for trout in the morning, and then everybody gets angry because they can't catch fish all day, and you have the river to yourself to catch carp all day long. It's freaking awesome. Anyway, all right, I digress. Sweet, sweet fishery. So I was on the Missouri, and I had 2 carp coming in, and I'd spooked a couple, so I was like, all right, I'm going to lead these fish. So I cast at this little spot that I thought they were going to, this little divot. And I'm watching it, and they're almost to it over here. And I'm like, I'm looking for my fly. I can't really see it. And I got my line a little tight so I can feel kind of when they get in there, and I can start twitching it. And then all of a sudden, this fish goes, and I'm like, oh. I just completely missed a little bit of current. It dropped it into the one over, and he picked it up and ate it, right? That's the only fish I've ever caught on lead and leave. I don't like it. Maybe I'm not patient enough. I'm going to twitch the fly. I can't if I'm going to do that. So anyway, that's kind of the next technique that you can do. And like I said, the guys that I taught to that fish this area, that is something that they do. And I do think it is effective. It's just not what I do. And then I want to go over one more kind of cool little technique that for fish that are near the surface, cruising just subsurface, you'll sometimes see those. You can actually catch those and have a heck of a lot of fun with them. And I use what's called the dry fly drag. Essentially what I'm doing is I'm throwing some kind of dry fly pattern. A lot of times I'll use like a little like poly wing caddis. It's just like a little piece of, poly yarn, just caddis. So it lands and it stays on top okay. And then all I gotta do is pull it just a little bit, and that sucks the water into the wing, and then it will drop. So I'll cast that out, and as the carp come over, I just go, whoop, and it sucks that water into the wing and then starts slowly floating down, and they'll swing by, and you'll see their big mouth go, whoop, and you got a fly on, right? So a lot of guys don't target these because it's a little bit weird, but I have caught hundreds of carp on this little dry fly drag. It's actually a really good technique for trout if they're hitting emergers and stuff like that too, right? Like if they're not quite hitting the surface, let them come over with your little dry and then just pull it just a little bit to get it to drop. It's a great technique. And on those, it's usually pretty dang obvious that they eat it. Yeah, we already kind of talked about the on the water stuff I wanted to talk about. Okay, so that's kind of my deal. Any more questions? Any questions? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, one of your things you say is look for the mouth open. Well, if the mouth is down sucking, how do you know if it's open?
You don't in that situation. But typically what will happen is, so if they're down on the bottom, head down like this, and I drop it in, they're going to come up off of it if they see it. Now, if it's super like murky and you can't see the head, you're not going to see the head, right? But I'm going to look for that, like, oh, that tail dipped. and I'm going to give it a strip set in that situation if I'm in that. But a lot of times, especially if you have a little bit of flow and the water's coming by, as soon as they pick that head up, that silt goes away, and then you'll see it. And there's nothing quite as obvious on the carp. Like if you're looking for a tell of a carp eat, is that, I mean, it looks like this giant white that will show up underwater. It's like a marshmallow down there that just all of a sudden appears and disappears. It's a huge tell when you start to recognize that. Any other questions? Yeah.
So if you have a fish that's like moving away from you,
Mm-hmm.
are you still doing the drag and drop?
I'm not casting at them at all.
Oh, okay.
Okay? Yep, let them go. Let them go, let them turn back around, let them do their thing, don't cast at them. Now, yeah, just don't.
Okay.
You're better off not. Because especially if they're cruising away slowly, you know, maybe they spooked and they're kind of getting out of there. Don't cast at them. They may circle back around slowly, get back in to start feeding and stuff like that. Just let them go. Don't cast if they're moving away from you.
Just like drop it to the side.
You can, but here's the problem you run into, and I'm not saying that doesn't work sometimes. I've caught fish doing exactly what you're talking about right now. But the majority of the time, right, if I'm going this way, and it doesn't matter how I do the drag and drop and I let pressure off, my fly is still going to move towards me in the water column, right? Just from the surface tension of the line, and as that goes down, it's going to pull towards me regardless. So now all of a sudden I've got a prey species of something, whatever that is, coming towards the fish. So if he sees that on the drop coming this way, you're going to scare the fish. It's not, look, it's fishing, right? 100% of the time it's not like a hard and fast rule in every situation. I would say by and large, just let that fish go. Don't spook that fish, because now if I've spooked that fish too, he may take 5 others that were coming this way, right? Just let him go and then wait for a better shot. Good question though. Yes?
What do you look for when you fish with dry fly? What behavior are you looking for when you
That they're moving. Right, so like the gentleman in the back here that talked about the sunning fish and stuff like that, it doesn't work as well for the sunners, that particular technique. Like I wouldn't do it for them, but if I have a fish moving just underneath the surface that's kind of cruising along, that dry fly drag technique works really well. They're not going to usually chase things very far. So it's got to be one of those where I get it kind of in position and then I pull it and let go so it flutters down as they're coming by, and they'll suck it in and eat it. So that's the biggest thing. As long as they're moving around, they usually the ones that are up near the surface that are moving aren't hauling. Sometimes they are, but usually the ones that are hauling, like I'm going from A to B and I'm out of here, like they're usually deeper. So the ones at the surface that are moving around are usually hunting. So they'll eat almost every time, as long as they're moving. Stationary, no. Yeah. And if you've ever seen them like where they got their mouths above water and they're just rah, 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 right? Those aren't eating, right? They're gasping. But that technique will work for those too. Cast it out next to them and then drag it by the pod, and they'll be like, oh, what's that? You can get those to eat too. But don't try to you can. They may accidentally suck your fly in on the surface, but they're not really eating in that. So you can get those ones to eat with that technique. Yes?
So I see a lot of fish that are kind of just cruising probably like about 2 feet under the water, and they're feeding off like vegetation, like they're just cruising and they'll come and they'll pick up something off of the vegetation. What like flies and techniques do you use to target those fish?
Okay, if those fish specifically, I'm usually using really light flies, leeches and stuff like that. I want that fly to be dropping. Those are going to be the very best to like pick up a fly on the go, right? So as it comes down, those ones are in all honesty, I almost like fishing for those more than I like tailors, because I can really get them on to catch it on the way down. Like a tailor most of the time, right, the fly comes down and then they come up and then they come over and they eat it. And sometimes something happens, but like those ones that they get it on as it's coming down can sometimes be they're just awesome because they'll catch it. And that's cool as it's coming down. So that lighter flies and then trying to target that. And part of the reason why light flies work good in that situation is it gives me more of a window, because it could be right here or right here, and the carp will make that little adjustment. If I have something that goes past them, they won't catch it.
Right.
And now I'm down in the junk, and a lot of times they won't pick it up.
So you're still like dragging and dropping?
Yep, I'm still dragging and dropping. Even the dry fly drag is drag and drop. Almost everything is drag and drop. Yeah. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah.
Water temperatures.
Yeah, so there's not a hard and fast rule. My carp in Utah, I think, are a little bit more used to colder water than like your carp in the Columbia here. I think we have bigger swings. So like when my water temperature gets to about 55 degrees, it's freaking on. The carp start going crazy, as long as it's a warm day. I think it's a little bit later here. I think I've heard more like 60 degrees here is really when they start picking up around here. But 55 to 60 is kind of like when things pick up. And yeah, like when you get up to like 70, it's let's go. But carp are very diverse, like really how they live and how they've adapted in different areas. So it's not a great answer. It depends on where you live a little bit. But 55 is when it starts, and it gets better and better as it goes up. Yeah?
What about spawning? And do they shut off in some particular water temperature to spawn, or what happens?
Yeah, so that's one of the great myths about carp. A lot of people think, hey, the spawn's on. I got to wait till the spawn's over till I fish. Heck no, man. In fact, I posted a video yesterday. There's a big female. She was about 20 pounds. She's got 3 males rubbing on her. They're full on spawning, and I dropped a fly in front, and she swims forward and whoa. Right? So do spawners eat? Okay, if they're like really going at it and the female's rolling and they're like full on splashing around like that, yeah, that fish is not going to eat. And I would honestly tell you that don't go target that clump of fish that's actively spawning. But go to that area, get outside, like say if I see some spawners and I'm back of the room right there, I'm gonna go post up right here. If I got spawners at the back of the wall right there, I'm gonna just wait right here, and there's gonna be fish coming in and out of that spawning area that are like, I'm tired, I've been trying to get with that female all day, I'm going to the bar, and I'm gonna intercept them on their way back out. And they will too, and they'll be hungry and they'll be aggressive because they've just been expending all this energy trying to mate, and they're starving. They'll come out and they'll start eating. So just post up near those spawning areas, and you'll have some of the best fishing you've ever had in your life. Yeah. Seriously, it's one of those myths that people think they don't eat during the spawn. And to a certain extent, that's true. And the males, when they're really like focused, they won't eat. But yeah, you can catch a lot of fish. Anything else? All right. Hey, I appreciate it, you guys. A lot of fun. Thanks for having me up here.